Everybody, welcome back to Plastic Models by a Regular Dude, and finally, part 10 of the Meng Jagdpanther G1. Okay, where I left off last time is it was all bare plastic. I was going to be talking about the paint, and I was also going to talk about the Kaizen tracks, which as you can see are done. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about the tracks first, and explain what happened, and then we'll get back on the main vehicle itself. So here we are with the tracks. Kaizen tracks, as you saw the box in the last video, hopefully. It is probably my preferred brand of tracks these days. I've been using them for a few years now. I really like them. They're much less expensive than the Fruel tracks, and less expensive than some of the other individual link tracks that are out there. Yet the detail is really good. They go together really well, and the detail is great. And they're really lightweight. But they take paint well, or they take primer, paint, and weathering well. And they're just really good tracks. And they're really simple to put together. And I put some together in the past, and basically what it boils down to, let me zoom in here, is the guide horns here. They're hollow, and these two guide horns are connected by a strip right here. And basically what you do is you just glue them in place, and you glue them all the way down. You glue them on each individual link. Once you do that, then you just assemble the links together, and you drive a wire pin through and cut it off. You can pre-cut the as a matter of fact, I think the instructions give you the length and tell you to pre-cut all your pins and then install them. I prefer to use this Tamiya bending plier here. Grab the wire, which just comes out of the package this long. Use this to drive it in. Once it's bottomed out, then I use my Xuron cutters that are for wire and metal only, and just cut them off flush, and good to go. And I just go down the length for however many I need, and voila, tracks are done. Ready for primer, ready for paint. So I primed them in black, and then I sprayed them with Tamiya XF52 Flat Earth. That gives me a good base coat. Then I can use some washes of varying colors, rusts, browns, and then eventually a dust colored wash, and I end up with some decent looking tracks. So those are the tracks. They're done and ready to go. So now to the vehicle. So in the last video, everything was pretty much assembled completely and ready to prime. So that's where I ended that video. The next video I started, I actually primed it, and I think I used Ammo One Shot brown oxide to prime it. Then I used Tamiya XF60 dark yellow, and I used that instead of the lighter colored Tamiya yellow that they've come out with for painting tricolor schemes, because there wasn't going to be that much showing. So I went ahead and went with that because I had plenty of it on hand. Then for the brown and the green, I used XF90 and XF89. Now the XF90 I had some problems with. Let me explain. First of all, after I painted the base yellow color, I figured I would use a pencil and lightly draw the brown scheme in place to make it a little easier to spray. Never done that before, but I thought, hey, I'll give it a try. And it didn't work out that great for a couple of reasons. Number one, the way I mix my paint, I mix it pretty thin. It wasn't really covering the pencil lines the way I wanted them to. And then I was also having problems with the paint itself. Now, Tamiya is generally really consistent as far as the viscosity and so forth. And for some reason, I used my usual mix and I couldn't get it to work right. I was getting spidering. It was doing this weird glossy thing. And all I was using was the paint and X20A Tamiya thinner, which is what I always use. But for some reason it was giving me fits. And it kept getting worse and worse and worse. And I tried to correct it and it wasn't working, and I was getting very, very frustrated. And it was looking horrible, to the point that I said, I'm done. So the time frame from the last video I did that I shot and now has been a couple of months probably, and that's the reason why. But a little while back, I decided to give it another go, and I did not use the XF90. I used good old XF64 and worked like a champ. Had no problems at all. I did it freehand instead of drawing it on there, which is what I should have done to begin with, and the brown turned out great. So then I gave the XF89 a shot. Dark green 2, which is supposed to be kind of corrected and a little more accurate for the dark green that was used on these tricolor schemes. It worked great. So the only problem was that bottle of paint. So there was much wailing and gnashing of teeth for not really any good reason. Because in the end, it worked out great. Because all I did was just respray it in yellow, redid the brown, everything worked out great. So, all that said, I am to the point now where I can do a clear coat on the vehicle and on the road wheels, sprockets, and idlers. So then I can do my decals, and then I can start in on weathering. Because if you watch my channel, you know that I like to do the weathering on the lower vehicle before I put all of the running gear and tracks in place. Then I'll also get these all weathered up and ready to go. And then once all that's done, I can put the running gear and everything on, and then I can continue weathering the rest of the vehicle. So without further ado, I'm going to mix up some clear and spray the vehicle and the wheels, and then we'll come back and see what we got. Okay, for my clear, I'm using Tamiya X22 gloss clear and X28 thinner, and the ratio I'm using is 1.5 milliliters of thinner to 1 milliliter of clear. So let us begin. Alright, so I've got the decals put on, and I've got some micro sol on them to hopefully dissolve them down a little bit, get them to snuggle in good. They're a little bit thick, and one of them actually broke, but I was able to fix it, but should be fine. So while those are drying, I'm going to go ahead and, using the kit tracks, I am going to make the spare tracks for the side so I can get those primed and painted along with some other spare parts, like the jack, I need to make the tow cables. And that was another thing that was kind of messed up, was the tow cables they supplied in the kit. They're supposed to be like 108 millimeters or something like that long, and the strip of cable that was supplied was not long enough. So I would have had to go with like just, you know, one cable on one side, or come up with something else. But what I decided to do, and I've been wanting to do it for a while, is I bought some aftermarket copper tow cables, and I can just use the kit ends, and it'll all be dandy. So I'm going to go ahead and keep cutting on these here, get them cleaned up, and then assemble them so they'll be ready for primer and paint. All right, I got them all assembled, so now I can get them sprayed. Jack block, jack, and the tracks. That's what I need to spray. Get my ammo one-shot black all shooked up. Here we go. Okay, so I've got the jack painted, and I painted it brown, camouflage brown, because it goes right where the camouflage brown is painted on the back of the vehicle. I've got the jack block painted brown because it's also in a brown spot. Convenient. I've got the tracks. I painted those a dark gray, and now I'm working on them, getting them slightly rusty. So I'm going to let that sit for a little bit and dry. So now I'm going to work on the cables. So basically what I'm going to do is I am going to put the cable ends where they go. And I've already drilled these out more. They already had an indentation, which makes it nice to center up, so I just drilled it out some more. And then I can actually put these in place. So I'm going to put these in place, and then I'll just take my cable and run it along, get the length, then I can glue it together. And then once I do that, I can paint them and have them ready for installation. So one other thing I need to do, that right here and right here on both sides where the cable ends go, there's some photo etch parts, so I'm gonna have to paint those and put those in place. One will be the German yellow, one will be the brown, so I can get those glued in place and then, you know, just touch them up with a brush or something. But I'll need to do that for the cables as well. So I am going to go ahead and do that. Now I think the cable that I'm going to use, I think is this 0.9 millimeter, but I'm going to open it up and take a look and see if that would be the best size. I know it's not too large. I just want to make sure it's not too small. I was originally going to get just some actual cables specifically for this vehicle, but it's much cheaper to just make your own with the cable ends you have. Oh, yep, just like Indiana Jones, I have chose wisely. All right, so I'm going to get one of these ends glued on, and then I'll stretch it out and see what length I need. All right, so got the cables done. So those will be ready to paint here in a little bit, but first I am going to start painting some of the detail stuff like handles, tools, fire extinguisher, shovel, etc. I'm going to start painting all that stuff. Okay, next up is I'm going to go ahead and prime these cables, and then once those are primed, I'm going to spray them with Vallejo acrylic metal color, airbrush colors, steel. Okay, with all the details painted on this, I sprayed some clear over the decals to kind of blend those in a little bit. So I'm going to let that sit aside and dry really well. I painted the jack, the camouflage color of the back, so that should be good. So next thing I'm going to do while all that's drying is I am going to start working on the tracks. So if you will remember, I have painted the tracks with a base coat of XF52 flat earth over black primer. So the next thing I'm going to do in order to start getting some a little bit of texture and depth to it, to sound all fancy, I'm going to start with some Vallejo Model Wash. It's acrylic, and I don't like acrylic washes, but for this, it actually works pretty good. So using just the rust color, I'm just gonna put some in there like that. Now it looks really bright, but when it dries a little bit toned down, so it shouldn't be that bright. And with subsequent layers of additional weathering, that will also tone it down. All right, so now I'm going to do, or I'm working on a wash on the whole thing, and I'm using like a really dark brown. It's really close to black looking, but it's actually brown. I tried just brown by itself, but that wasn't showing up at all. And anything that's really too stark will be toned down. So I start doing some more weathering. So that's what I'm doing right now. And the washes I'm using is Untitled 502. I'm using brown wash and black. And then once it dries up a little bit, I'll come back with a dry brush and get any tide marks or anything like that handled. All right, so I've got all the wheels had a wash put on them. Now I'm working on the tracks, and what I've done is I've mixed up kind of a heavy wash of 502 Abtailoon buff and regular old mineral spirits, and I'm applying that liberally on the tracks here, start building up a dust layer. All right, the next thing I'm doing here is the next round of weathering underneath the edge of the hole here. And the first product I'm using is dark mud. So I've done this side to get it started, and I'll show you how I do it on this side. Basically take it, get a small brush, and just basically work it around. Like this, kind of a smudgy, not quite I don't know, oil dot method. It's more of a smeary because I want it pretty heavy as the base layer of weathering underneath here. Keeping in mind that there's going to be other bits of weathering stuff put on here. So there's that. Clean this brush. And then taking my kind of munched up brush here, just start working it in. It's going to be pretty solid near the bottom, a little more splotchy up higher. But just to give it a ground in, muddy look. All right, with that done, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to mix up a thin, almost pasty batch of mud using Vallejo light sienna pigment and pigment binder as opposed to pigment fixer. I want binder because it'll make it a little bit thicker and it'll make it look a little bit more like deposited mud. That I'm mainly going to concentrate on areas where mud would settle and kind of cake, like all along in here, some in here, along top there, mainly down lower, and then as I work my way up, I'll make it'll be more dusty type deposits. So what I'm going to do, make sure I'm going to do it on both sides. I'm also going to do it like inside of the drive sprocket here. And then that way all of the inner type stuff will be done, and I can put the tracks and wheels in place. So let's move this over out of the way. Add the binder. See what kind of consistency we're getting here. All right, now that's dry, I'm going to use my dark earth, and I'm just going to sprinkle some of this in here. Then scrub it in, and then fix it with some fixer just to darken it up a little bit and to add a little bit more variety in the color here. Like this. All right, so the next thing I need to do is polish the edge of these inner road wheels, because photographs of the real deal, this part of the rim has been polished smooth from rubbing up against the guide horns of the track. To accomplish this, I'm using graphite pencil 2B, which is quite soft, and just going around thusly. Like that. And voila. So next, I want to get the contact points of the idlers, doing the same thing. And then the teeth on the drive sprockets. These would probably be easier to do just painting them, but in order to maintain sameness, I'll do it like this. So the next thing I want to do is I want to use this graphite, and I want to add some polished metal on the tracks, because these wheels run down the middle, these run down the outside, so there's going to be some rubbing on the guide horns on the inside, and then all along where the rubber of the road wheels runs on the track. So again, let's see. Mainly, it's just going to be along that edge like that. It's not exact. I'm not going to sweat it because there's going to be dirt and dust, all kinds of other groovy stuff smeared on there. So then I also need to get on the inside here. Like that. And on the guide horns on the inside. They'd be polished on this side as well, but since you can't even see those, I'm not going to sweat it. So like that. Okay, so I'm threading the tracks on here. I was going to show how I did the wheels, but I couldn't do it with my camera angle because I actually had to do it in my lap. Basically what I did is I flipped the vehicle over and I just loosely placed the idler, put this one, then this one, this all loosely, and then using tweezers to hold the swing arms where the axles come out and my finger, I just gradually pressed them on to the axles, going back and forth till they were bottomed out. Because if you'll remember early on, or if you're familiar with this kit, they have polycaps and inside the wheels, and they need to be pressed fit into place, and it's really tight. However, it's not so tight that you have to trim anything off of the axle itself. So just some food for thought there. And then what I do is I press fit that together I'll flip it over like this, and using my photo etch bending tool, once it's lined up, then I just put, you probably can't see this, it's probably blocked, but I just start the track pin like that, and then just push it on home, et voila. Tracks are installed and they have the proper amount of sag, as you can see there. So that's that. Tracks are in place. So now with that, I'm ready to move on to the next stage of weathering, and that's all the exposed outside areas, since I've already got the inside underneath the whole sponsons. So with that, I'm going to call this video quits. So that ends part 8/9 because of the way I ended up having to do this because of the aforementioned problems with paint and stuff. So the end of part 8/9 of the Meng 1/35 scale Jagdpanther G1 project. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, hints, tips, anything like that, please put them in the comments section down below, and I'll read them up, or I will answer your questions, whatever you might have. So, as always, thanks for watching Plastic Models by a Regular Dude, and I will see you all next time.